Gladiators were the rock stars of their time, but they were also stigmatized by society. Even though they were slaves who represented some of the highest ideals of Roman society, women in Rome nonetheless sought to satiate their passion for the fierce, muscular warriors by engaging in gladiator sex and using the combatants' perspiration as an aphrodisiac. It goes without saying that gladiators were in an interesting position, both physically and figuratively, when it came to sex in ancient Rome. Fortunately, there is a wealth of evidence to show us what it was like for both the gladiators and those trying to find a way into their tunics. Our knowledge of sexuality throughout history is based on archaeological evidence, such as sexual graffiti, as well as the works of contemporary writers. Join us today as we look at super interesting facts about the sex lives of Roman gladiators. Gladiators were akin to sex workers on the social ladder, despite their appeal. In Roman society, gladiators had very little standing. Even though most gladiators, especially in the early days of the gladiatorial practice, were slaves or prisoners, freemen who entered into gladiatorial combat were typically from lower social classes. Gladiators were in a unique situation since they were on the same level as other men and women who offered their services, such as actors and those in the sex industry. Gladiators were pushed to the periphery of propriety while being praised for their bravery, achieving fame for their victories, and being desired by women. Although gladiators were lauded by crowds for accepting death, gladiators were viewed by polite Roman society as little more than slaves who were compensated and admired for their willingness to risk their lives. Emperor Commodus was rumored to have been fathered by a gladiator. Faustina the Younger, the wife of Emperor Marcus Aurelius, is said to have become ill as a result of her attraction to a gladiator she witnessed during a display of combatants, according to two Roman historians Herodian and Dio Cassius. She told her husband about the man, and Aurelius consulted soothsayers to see what he should do to ease his wife's passion. They advised him to have the gladiator killed with Faustina on top of him, drenching her in his blood. It appears that the gladiator was having sexual relations with Faustina at the time. After he perished, she was then to immediately have relations with her husband. Whether or not the myth is accurate, it emphasizes the almost magical powers and strong sexuality that were attributed to gladiator blood. Their son Commodus, who went on to become emperor, may have, in fact, had gladiator blood in his veins. He preferred participating in gladiatorial combat to being emperor, often fighting physically disabled people or animals while on a raised platform. Gladiator sweat and blood were sold as an aphrodisiac. In ancient Rome, gladiator bodily fluids were highly prized. Gladiator sweat was used as perfume and a beauty treatment. It was even collected and sold in pots as a souvenir. Gladiator blood was also employed as an aphrodisiac. To ensure that her marriage would be long and fruitful, a young woman might have her hair parted on the night of her wedding using a sword that had been dipped in the blood of a dead gladiator. Roman women used gladiators as bodyguards. Hiring a gladiator as a bodyguard wasn't a bad idea. Having a retired or off-duty trained warrior to protect you makes sense. This would have been a lucrative venture for the gladiator as well. Gladiators were hired to keep military forces in line or to defend elite Romans when they traveled. However, women seized on the phenomenon of hiring gladiators for different reasons. According to Philip Matissak, author of the Gladiator's Manual, many a wealthy lady who hires gladiator bodyguards for the night does so in expectation of her body being guarded very closely indeed. Gladiators could be hired out as male escorts. In a lot of ways, gladiators lost the ability to control their bodies either as slaves or freemen who voluntarily became fighters. In spite of this, the prospect of sexual relations wasn't always unappealing. Gladiators were expected to take advantage of opportunities to use their bodies as instruments of carnal lust, and some may have seen it as a perk of the job. Roman graffiti tells the story of gladiator fangirling. At Pompeii, archaeologists discovered graffiti that offers insight into how Romans felt about their favorite gladiators. In the gladiator barracks, one inscription reads, "Floronius, privileged soldier of the 7th Legion, was here. The women did not know of his presence. Only 6 women came to know, too few for such a stallion. Another says, Anchises hung out here with his girlfriend Cythera, indicating that gladiators, in fact, had girlfriends. 2 inscriptions, Saladus the Thracian gladiator is the delight of all the girls, and Saladus the Thracier makes the girls moan, also seem to make it very clear that Saladus was quite the fighter and the lady pleaser. It's unclear who wrote these lines, though, perhaps Saladus just wanted to leave a good reputation behind. Female gladiators were given less armor to show off their bodies. Female gladiators, also known as gladiatrix, weren't as common as their male counterparts. In fact, they were banned in 200 BCE. However, when women did enter the ring, they were heavily sexualized. Female gladiators wore loincloths, as opposed to the tunics men wore, and were not given helmets, presumably to show off their faces and hairstyles. Fights involving female gladiators were the epitome of luxury and indulgence, and were frequently staged at private feasts hosted by the Roman wealthy. Archaeological evidence indicates that women used the same weapons as men, however. One statue believed to depict a female gladiator features a bare-chested woman holding a sica, a short, curved sword associated with a type of gladiator known as a Thrax or Thracian. Thank you for watching. To support our channel, please subscribe.